Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. 1 week away now from Manx Grand Prix. A little bit of a preview about that and then a few more questions to get through. Let's get straight into it. So 1 week to go until the start of Manx Grand Prix 2024 and really starting to look forward to it again now. The weather has improved a little bit over the last couple of days. Yesterday was a bit crap, but today's been nice. It's warm. The weather seems to be getting a bit better. And I know it's going to be nice all this weekend. I'm looking at the forecast, hoping it's not come a week too soon. I've spoken about it before, I know I have. I feel like everyone's due a good week of weather for the Grand Prix. And I know that means nothing, but for the sake of the organisers, the marshals, and the competitors and everybody involved in it, it's just so nice to have a week of good weather, 10 days of good weather, where we just get nice predictable conditions, very few, if any, delays, and yeah. But fingers crossed for that. In the next few days, we'll find out roughly what's going to happen with the weather for the start of practice week. So we'll get into that. And speaking of the weather, brings me on to a question that we've been getting quite a bit, and not specific to us at all, but people just been discussing it in general about TT course. And it's to do with that patch at Glen Helen, and there's a few others as well this year. So, as happens every year at the TT and on the Isle of Man, is that once the Manx Grand Prix is finished, and then once winter gets out of the way, which in itself just causes a lot more damage to the road, they get to springtime, and they start looking at the TT course and start looking at which bits need resurface work. And so on that this year, and it definitely needed doing, was Glen Helen Corner itself. And you'll all know exactly what I'm talking about because it's been all over, everything over TT about the water that was coming out even on dry days. And so if you know that corner, the banked left-hander actually in Glen Helen, the outside part of that corner, and if you remember on my onboard lap and I went through it and you can see the new tarmac, they resurfaced that outside half and left the inside half with the old tarmac. So there's a join line in the middle. It's pretty much right on the white line. And that's not an unusual practice for road repairs to just do a patch here or a half there or what have you. But for whatever reason, in that area, the water just seems to keep coming through the join. I'm not saying it wasn't done properly. I just don't know the details of the ground under that bit of road. I don't know. All I know is that even after several dry days, after rain, water still comes through that piece of road. And it wasn't just a little bit. At times, it was coming through and then running down the inside and causing the whole left lane to have small little rivers of water running through it. And obviously, that's not ideal for anybody. It's not ideal, but it won't have affected lap times. I mean, it will if you're going to start looking at every 100th. Of course, everyone's had to just stand up and roll a little bit for that and not carry as much speed. Of course, it has affected lap times if you look at it at detail. But from a safety point of view, that was the concern with it. But on the flip side, everybody knew it was there, and it was such an unusual thing to be there that nobody forgot it was there. And so we had no accidents there. And the concern going forward is that at Grand Prix, you've got less experienced riders, way more newcomers, and the likelihood of something happening there is potentially increased. And I was humming hard about whether to bring this up because, and it's not real, but you don't want to jinx it, do you? You don't want to say it's more likely to happen at Grand Prix than it does. And they're like, you jinxed it, but that clearly isn't a thing. That would just be coincidence. But I'm hoping that if somebody watches this who is a newcomer, and I know quite a few of the newcomers this year have been watching the videos because I spoke to quite a few of them about it and they've asked me some questions. If only one of them pays 2% more extra attention to that area of the course because I'm bringing it up now, then it's worth making, isn't it? And that's the way I'm looking at it. I'm not looking like it's a jinx. I'm looking at it as though I'm just making people more aware. And I know everybody who doesn't race wants to talk about it anyway because they just do. But the main reason really for mentioning it and bringing this up is just hopefully it'll just create a little bit more in the mind of the rider Potentially. If it doesn't, it doesn't matter. And if it does, then that's great. So yeah, why it's happening, we're not too sure. It's definitely going to be looked at again before next year. I was kind of thinking they might have sorted it out before Grand Prix, but whoever decides these things has deemed it's okay, so we're going to carry on. End of the day, if that was a corner at Silverstone, it would have been sorted out the next day. But it's a road, and roads are different, and you do have to put up with different things on roads that aren't circuits, and that's why it's road racing. That's why it's such a challenge. So this time next week, Jim will be sat opposite me, and we've got a load of good questions for Jim to answer. And I think it's going to be quite nice to just have somebody else in this room rather than me just sat here talking to this camera. Somebody to engage with. It's not like I don't go out of my garage like week on week. I'm out every day talking to real people. But yeah, it'd be nice to have that interaction between us. And Jim's really interesting. Like I could just listen to Jim all day, like I've said before. So I've got a load of questions that I'd like to answer, but I'm going to save them for Jim's video. We might end up even like have enough content to make a couple out of it and then just sort of release them through Grand Prix, hopefully. And do a bit of a Manx Grand Prix preview as well, because Jim knows way more about the riders, really. He has such a close connection with working with them on their lead up to Grand Prix that he's got more information about them than I do. So it'll be interesting to see what he thinks. Not just about the newcomers, but the potential race winners in the other classes. Going on from that, interesting news come out this week that Michael's not going to ride a Suzuki in the Classic Superbike race. He's going to run a Ducati. So, like Dean ran one last year, didn't he? And he almost won on it, but it expired as everyone predicted it would be. But he nearly got it there. Is Michael more mechanically sympathetic than Dean? I don't know. Some people say he won't even make a lap on it, but I'm sure he will. Like, you don't win all those races that Michael's won on some of them on very, very fragile machinery without some mechanical something. He knows what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. So wouldn't it be nice for Michael then to tick off, I've also won on a Ducati, as well as all the Japanese bikes and the pattern, and just trying to get as many as he can, I think. And I think maybe that's the reason why he brought a Triumph to TT this year, and obviously he did a night or two on it and realised he wasn't going to be able to compete on that and went back to the R6, but he could tick off Triumph as well then, can't he? And I don't know who else he's going to be after. He's not going to start digging out MVs and trying to win on them, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, interesting, but we'll talk more about that when Jim's here about the Grand Prix. I was kind of hoping to hear some more news about Conor after him riding for FHO, hoping that maybe everyone was happy and he was going to sign a deal the next week for TT next year, but I'm sure like whoever's trying to sort out whatever they're trying to sort out for Conor is trying to do it as quickly and get the best thing for him as they can, and we'll all be told in good time. I was just kind of hoping it was going to come out really quick. So, you know my point of view on Conor. I want him on like the best bike with the best chance of winning a TT. And that's probably his best chance at the moment. So hopefully they can sort some kind of deal out there and Faye can get another bike out and Conor can have a good pop at TT25 on that. And then on to the last sort of question I got. I was talking with Lee, who helped sort out the podcast I did with Manx Radio, and Lee's a big part of everything that runs up at Derby. And he asked me a question just about travel marshals and about number one. And what extra, responsibilities and jobs does number one have? And how is the next number one picked and who decides it? So in terms of the responsibilities and things, in terms of actual travelling marshal duty, we're all the same. We're just a travel marshal at a certain place on the course, and if something goes off in your sector, you go to it. And that doesn't matter if you're number one, number 8, or anything in between. Where it differs for Tony at number one, and Tony will be able to tell you himself in more detail, really, and I should really get Tony on because apart from Jim, he's got as much experience as anybody and more. It's all the stuff behind the scenes that you don't see, and sometimes we don't even see. So on the lead up to TT, Tony will be talking with Honda about where the bikes are coming. He'll be talking with RST about any new suits, any new boots, helmets, jackets, bibs, anything that we wear on our bodies, apart from our RI, is coming from RST. And there might be a new suit, there might be new jackets and different sizes and how many, and so Tony's sorting that out. He's also liaising with all the medical team to organise all his trips to the hospital, to work with the helicopter crew and work with the doctors. He's talking with the medical guys about all the gear that goes in our bags. So sometimes, due to procedural changes or whatever it may be, the items that we carry in our bag will change. So Tony will be sorting out what needs changing. We've only got so much room in there. So what we're going to sacrifice, what just we don't need anymore because now we're not using these because the procedure's changed. And then he's organising getting all that stuff here. He's also organising actually getting the bags from Oxford Products. And not only that, he's going to then have the plates on the bikes fabricated, bespoke fabrication to fit our particular Fireblade and the bag. So he works with an engineering company on the island to sort that out. Then he's working with all the TT people to make sure that everything's in order. And then just down to little things like he's going to signwriting companies to get our yellow backgrounds and get our numbers and get our small numbers. Then he's talking to different companies about who's going to provide the big screens. And although this year's not been as bad because we've used the same plates and the same screens as last year because the bikes haven't changed, when we get a new model out, we're all like, hey, great, a new model, can't wait for the new Fireblade. And Tony's thinking, I've got loads more work to do now because I've got to sort all these bits out. And so we'll go to our meeting with the helicopter crew, like maybe a week, 10 days before the start of TT. And when we're finished, Tony opens up the boot of the car and he's got a box for every single one of us. And inside one of these boxes is our radios, our fuel cards, all of our medical gear, any new jackets anybody needed, any new gear that anyone's would needed or RST provided. And it's almost a full-time job for Tony. And he was down to me this week because some of the fuel cards have changed. So he's just going around collecting them and distributing them again. And then he's dealing with AGR, who are the partner we use to look after the bikes. So he's sorting out with them what needs doing, when it needs doing, and then he comes to us and says, right, the bikes need to be here, there, or wherever, on this date, or whatever. So it's just, you think that we've got a busy role. It's nothing compared to Tony. And this is all on the lead up to Grand Prix. So let's say that first practice is this Sunday and the roads don't close till 12. I live a stone's throw from the grandstand, and that's where I'm going to have to get to just before roads close. And so all I'm thinking is on Sunday morning, make sure all my stuff, all my own personal stuff is absolutely spot on and ready to go for first practice. Tony will be at the grandstand at 7 a.m. for the daily meeting with all the heads of all the departments. And that's every single day of the entire event from first practice to last race. And that's not if you fancy it, that is you have to be there every day to get all the information from all the other departments in case anything needs to be filtered down to us for whatever reason it may be, to do with schedule changes, procedure changes, whatever. So it's a huge extra workload for somebody for nothing extra in return, essentially. Other than the fact you've got number one on your bike and you are the Chief Traveller Marshal, and it says that in the programme. But Tony's not doing it for that. He's doing it because he's the best man for the job, and he's our leader, he's our captain, he's the guy who makes sure that everything's in place so we can go out and do the best jobs that we can. And then there's all the extra things that he does that are to do with anything to do with the media. So if anybody wants to speak to the travel marshals for interviews or to do any film work or anything like that, it all comes through Tony. And so sometimes Tony will do it himself. He does bits with Honda himself. And then this year, for instance, you saw the work that I did with them. And Tony asked me early on in practice week saying that Honda, at an official capacity, had approached him and said they wanted to do some filming with travel marshals. And would I like to do it on behalf of the TMs? And I was more than happy to do it. MCN contacted Tony and through Jim as well and asked about the interviews there. So me and Jim went and did that. But it all comes through Tony. Tony needs to organise with these people. What do you want? When do you want to do it? And then liaise with us to find somebody to do it. And it's just, there's loads of extra work. There's so much extra work that goes into being number one. And yeah, it's a massive job. Tony, Tony must come down to my workshop or round to my house at least 7 or 8 times a year with bits and pieces for us. And it's not just me, is it? There's 7 other lads he's got to do it for. So yeah, it's a huge job, it's a huge responsibility, and those are the extra responsibilities of being a number 1. And following on from that, the second part of that question was, how is the next number 1 selected? So at some point, Tony will either have had enough and decide he doesn't want to do it anymore, and we're ready for a new number 1. And so what happens is another number 1 will be recruited from inside the group. And basically, Tony picks the guy that he thinks is going to be the best person to lead the team. And in conjunction with the TT, more centred around the current clerk of the course, between them, they'll decide, they'll make a decision, and that's how it'll be done. And that's it. That's between Tony and, at the moment, Gary. They'll just pick who they think should be the next number 1, and that's how it's decided between them. So that pretty much wraps up the couple of things I want to talk about this week. Again, Jim will be here next week. Next Friday we're going to do it, so it'll be out some point over next weekend. And then on the Sunday, it's first practice. So we'll be getting an update just after that anyway of how everything's gone. So thanks again for watching. See you in the next one.